Alex, welcome to Inside the Truck. Nice to have you with us. Thank you so much for carving out some of your time during your extremely busy hockey season. I think we find you in Seattle today. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. You know what? One of those holiday travel days where sometimes you wind up 2.5 hours late, and that's okay because I'm here, and the number of takeoffs equal the number of landings. So that's always important.
Critical.
Yeah, we're just happy you could join us. So thank you for that. I'm going to start right at the start. Not only are you our featured guest for episode 52, but truth be known, you're actually a fan of the podcast. Is that
Oh yeah,
correct?
yeah. I'm a big fan. I've listened to you guys from when you first did this, and then waited and through that hiatus until you could do it again. So I'm very honored to be a guest on this show.
Well, we call your truck part of Trucker Nation. So welcome to Trucker Nation officially. Anyway, we'll get started. Since it is hockey season and you're working hockey right now, first of all, belated congratulations on the gig with the Rangers. As a kid who grew up in Brooklyn, it's kind of a full circle moment for you. Uh, Not only are you doing radio for them, you're also filling in for them on the TV side when Kenny has some conflict. So, is that a dream job for you or what?
100%. The just the thought that I could go home is a dream enough, and the fact that I get to work for the hometown team is icing on the cake. Because in this business, so often you have to take the leap for the job, and in this case, I took a leap in coming back home, and everything seemed to work out as far as getting the job. So I am incredibly grateful for the opportunity to be part of an original six franchise in, as any New Yorker would tell you, the greatest city in the world, and just to get to be in a place where I grew up. It's amazing.
When you were growing up, what was your team? Who were your guys that you loved? What sports did you love?
It's funny. I sometimes get people confused when I say when I was growing up, I wasn't a huge hockey fan. And at the time, you got to know, like I was 5 years old when the Rangers won the Stanley Cup in '94. And in the early aughts, the Devils may have been winning, but like the Rangers would have been my team. And just there wasn't much going on besides Gretzky in those final few years there. So I was more of a baseball fan. And of course, in those years, those were the dynasty years for the Yankees
Yeah.
in the late '90s, early 2000s. So I was much more of a baseball fan then, and I really kind of dove into hockey, I guess, full bore when I went to college because I had a team I could root for in college, and it just happened to, spark or reignite my love for the sport in a way that manifested itself in the ability to work in it, through student radio and get to broadcast college hockey games.
Hey, you're being kind of modest about waxing over your time at Northeastern because he won a very Steve. He won an extremely prestigious, easy for me to say, award, the Jim Nantz Award in 2011 for the top collegiate sports broadcaster in the United States. So I would say that would look pretty good on the resume
It
when you
looks
first
pretty good
started
on my
out.
mantle. I'll tell
Yeah,
you
I
that.
bet, right? Yeah.
I gotta say it was the people at Northeastern um, treat me as if I was a player there. They have been so kind. It's been like a family, and I go back. They've shown so much loyalty to me, and I feel so loyal to them. They're incredible, wonderful people first and foremost, and they've built a terrific hockey program there too over the last decade, and it was fun to see it up close and personal. And because now they're a top 15 program, and I would never have imagined that when I was in college.
So
When
when
was the
you,
last?
sorry,
Sorry,
Paul,
go
go
ahead.
ahead.
No, go. No, you go ahead, Steve.
Okay. So as you're growing up, before you get to Northeastern, at what point do you think, or are you in school and then you go into broadcasting at university, or how do you get to the point where you think, oh, maybe I could do this for a living?
Well, I'll tell you, it didn't happen until I graduated that I actually thought maybe I could do this for a living. My parents both worked in the business. My dad was a producer for many years. My mom did the same. My dad worked at Fox News for many years. My mom worked for a variety of the local TV stations in New York. So I was exposed to the industry, I guess. But it was never a thought that, oh, I'm just going to go into this field. It was just something cool that I happened to be exposed to. And then in college, I got involved with the student radio station and again thought, okay, this is a fun hobby. I've always been interested in broadcasting just by being around it and never really had a thought that I would be good enough to make this into a living because it's so hard to do. And I didn't study it. I studied economics in college and carved myself out a pretty good career in that after graduating. And I thought, okay, this is going to be, I'll do this. Maybe I'll moonlight nights and weekends. That'll be fun. But it was my senior year, and I was just wrapping up the Northeastern hockey season, and I was starting to think to myself, man, I may never get the chance to do this ever again. And it kind of just hit me, okay, I kind of want to do this. I still don't think I can do this for real, but I kind of want to try. And on nights and weekends, I had the flexibility to moonlight and do, local colleges and got an opportunity to fill in the American Hockey League. Got a little cup of coffee in minor league baseball and started to open some doors. And it's led me down this path to be able to carve out a real career, a real job. I did it for real. It's awesome.
I find it strange and different from other businesses in that in this business, the more you do, the more you stick your nose into places and things you do, right? The
Mhm.
better it gets. That's kind of a weird thing about this business.
Yeah, well, first of all, as you know, it's addicting. Once you get the rush of doing something live, you want to do it again.
Oh yeah.
So there's that, but also, just when you're around, uh, let's say the rink, for instance, because I came up in the college hockey ranks, and even on nights where I wasn't calling a game, I was writing for USCHO, US College Hockey Online, and I did it for free just to be around the rink. I had a stable day job. I just wanted to be around, and as it turned out, just being around opened a lot of doors for me because I continued to build relationships and make connections, even though that wasn't necessarily my intent to network. And I hate that word because it seems so transactional, but inevitably that's what happens when you're just around and people recognize you as a regular.
And that leads to a bunch of more open doors for you, right? Because let's say if you're a hockey fan and you want to be a hockey broadcaster, you get blinders on to do hockey, but you were exposed to other sports,
Mm.
basketball, right? Baseball, hockey, and so right from the early stages of your broadcasting career, you were very versatile, and without stroking too much, you're like one of the most versatile sportcasters on TV right now, just by your NHL, your MLB, tennis, you do them all at such an elite level. And that probably came from grassroots, right? Back in your college days.
Well, I appreciate that. It's more to do, I think, in the early stages of my career with what were the means to the end. The end was I wanted to be doing hockey on TV. I wanted to work in the NHL. Well, I can't do that unless I go do hockey on the regular or do TV on the regular. And I kind of chose to do more so on the TV side on the regular, and that was college basketball. There's a ton of college basketball on television. The tonnage of inventory that these networks have, they struggle to be able to put these games on the air to find crews to do it, as we know. And I happened to get a lucky break where my first gig working for Nesson wasn't actually a hockey game. It was a college basketball game. Happened to be at TD Garden. They had a triple header with the local college programs. And I had already gotten a foot in the door there, and they asked me to do this gig, which then opened the door to doing college hockey there. And my basketball tape opened the door to do college basketball with Fox and early on in my career at ESPNU. And so the tonnage of college basketball enabled me to get TV reps and just enjoying hockey as a fan and loving especially the college game at the time and being involved in it allowed me to then parlay that into doing college hockey, which gave me tape to send out to NHL teams. And it just, as you know, doing it yourselves, when you get one gig and you do a good enough job with it, they might ask you back, and then they might ask you back again, and then you hopefully can build enough of those to where it becomes a stable career.
So when you get that first gig at Nesson, try to remember the day or that you're doing it. Nervous as hell or
Oh
pretty
yeah.
cool?
Oh yeah. I barely remembered my own name. I was so nervous. I think I was trembling on camera because we had to do a stand up with stick mics on the court. And I remember what the thought of looking into this inanimate object, this camera, and trying to remember my lines, and I'm stammering over my own name, and it's one of three games I have to call that day. It was the most nerve-wracking experience of my career. And I'm glad that I'm a little bit more comfortable doing on cameras now, because for a long time it was the worst part of my day of just, okay, I got to remember what I'm going to say. I can't memorize my words because then if I trip, I have to go back and try to remember exactly the order that I had them in. And don't forget your own name and don't forget your partner's name. It's crazy.
Memorizing is not your friend, right? People
No,
don't
it's the
realize that.
worst.
Just get an overview of what you think you're going to say and wing it, right?
Yeah. The best thing, and I've given advice to younger broadcasters, the best thing you can do is view it like uh, an open book test when you're calling the game and an elevator pitch when you're doing your stand up or your open. You should know the material enough to get by and wing it. Uh, that if you're, given a prompt, you can talk about the game, broadly speaking. You should not need notes in front of you to do that. If you want to say something pithy coming on the air, and I do like to do that, then fine. But once the red light goes on with the camera, you got to just know the material. That's all it is.
I want to go in the time machine here really quickly, not to wax over your time in the American Hockey League you spent with the Utica Comets. That's a great place. The AHL is a great place to cut your teeth on pro hockey. But in 2017, only 5 years out of college, you land the coveted job with the Los Angeles Kings, filling in for legend, and I use that term lightly, Bob Miller. And at that time, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you were probably the youngest play-by-play guy in the NHL.
I was, and Brendan Burke, who is a friend of mine, and we tag teamed in Utica. I filled in for him. He would not let me forget it because he could only keep that title for 1 year before I stole it from him. So he still won't forgive me for that. But it was the opportunity of a lifetime, right? I was definitely in over my skis a little bit from the standpoint of not having a lot of reps in hockey on TV, but I tried to take all the experience from doing 3+ years of college basketball and college hockey and one NHL game, which I was fortunate enough to have under my belt before then, into this experience. And the only reason why it worked was LA was a great organization that gave me a chance and believed in me. And B, I had a wonderful partner who supported me and treated me like family from the get-go, and that's Jim Fox. Because if he didn't do that, I would have sunk. I would have drowned, and he made sure that I didn't. It's to this day the greatest gift that you can give somebody in this business if they're new to a position or they're starting out or they don't know what they don't know is the ability to teach somebody or to just have support in some way, just give you a hand when you need it. And he was certainly there for me early on in my career as I was learning this league.
Yeah, in LA, Bob Miller and Nick Nixon were legends. And then
Oh,
Jim
yeah.
Fox came there and Daryl Evans was in there. Did you feel the weight of all that or were you able to put
Yeah.
that aside?
I tried not to think about it my first few months there, but it was January of 2018, and we had a game where we put a banner in the rafters honoring Bob Miller, and it really hit me then. I knew how much of a legend he was. He was already in the Hall of Fame. Um, Nick Nixon already in the Hall of Fame then, so I already knew the company that I was with there. But to see a banner hanging from the rafters in an
Mhm.
NHL rink honoring a broadcaster, okay, yes, those shoes are size extra, extra large. And you're being asked to wear them and walk around them and not trip all over yourself.
Your time in LA though was probably good for your broadcasting career, as not only you did the Kings games, but you could also freelance as well. And and that led you into some MLB and other sports as well too to increase your portfolio. Talk about your time in LA and the experience that you gained over your years there.
Well, it was born out of that same, I guess, feeling of survival. Not that I was trying to survive in LA, but it was the idea of I need to stay well-rounded to have a career. I wasn't at 27. First and foremost, I wanted to get through that first year before taking on anything huge after that. But I did want to continue to grow my skill set just beyond doing hockey play-by-play. Yes, I wanted to do a good job with that, but I also wanted to continue to stay well-rounded. Just you never know where this business leads you, not only from what fun opportunities might be around the corner, but also if things change, having a backup plan. And lo and behold, 6 years in with the Kings, right? Circumstances change. The regional sports network or the regional sports network world was shifting rapidly, and I'm glad I had other work that I could pivot to. And I'm lucky that I've had such a great relationship for many years with the folks at Fox Sports, who, even when I couldn't commit to anything full time with them for the last 10 years, it's basically been, hey, can you do this game? Yeah, great. If you can't, okay, no worries. And they've continued to bring me aboard for whether it's college football, college basketball. And as you mentioned, Chopper, opening the door with MLB, and that's since been a part of my career path that I never would have expected. The Tennis Channel was based in LA, and I let it be known to them, hey, I played tennis. It's a sport I know really well. I'd like to try it out. And that wound up being a great addition to my career as well. And since has allowed me to go back into the sport now that TNT has some of those rights. But at the end of the day, maybe I'm using the wrong word by calling it survival. But I always thought that in order to have a long career in this business, you need to have a diversified skill set. And maybe that applies to any line of work, that you can't just be siloed.
I'm interested in your perspective from someone who's a different generation than me. When you're working today at your age, how important do you think it is to know about the history of the sport you're calling? Can you give it a percentage? Do you think it's really important, or do you think it's drifting away from that and it's more important for you to just be able to call that game you're watching right now?
I think there is a time and place for history, but I would agree with the feeling that it's not as important as it used to be. I
Okay.
think you do need to have a fundamental understanding of, let's say the founding fathers of your sport, or the Mount Rushmore is probably a better term to use. If you're not familiar with Wayne Gretzky or Bobby Orr or uh, Jacques Plante or whatever, just if you're not familiar with the core names there, then I think you're going to be in a little bit of trouble. But I would say I learned on the fly a lot of the history with the LA Kings. I did a lot of studying in that summer, but I would be lying if I said when I walked into my first game that I knew everything about the history of the franchise from '67 onward. I had to learn about the key names going in, but I learned over the next 6 years about individual games and individual moments, and got to meet players and put faces to names that were well before my time. I think to try and walk in and say that you have an understanding of the history of any franchise, and I'm doing this with the Rangers here as well, I'd be lying if I said I knew the entire 100-year history of the Rangers. I'm familiar with a lot of the key names, just having grown up in New York and having watched the Rangers growing up, but I'm having to learn a lot during their centennial season about the formative years of the franchise in their original six era. I'm just not as familiar with it. And that's, not to say that it isn't important, but I also don't use it on the regular. Each and every broadcast, we're bringing something different this year with the centennial season. I'm just trying to be mindful of, if there's something that I don't know, don't try to say something about it that may not be 100%. It's where you get exposed, it's where you get burned, and I'm not trying to claim that I know everything about it when I don't.
I absolutely love that answer. And just to follow up, there's nothing wrong with learning as you go and sometimes even learning on the air if you do it right, right?
Hmm. Yeah, I think that's part and parcel with the job. That yeah, I'll give you an example. I didn't know the name Tiger Williams until I was many years into LA. We had a Legends night there where we brought him back for one game, and I didn't quite understand how much of a character this guy was and how much of a legendary hockey figure he became until after we go through the day of, he had his time with his speech at the rink, and we're at a bar at the hotel across the street, and he puts me in a headlock. I kid you not, I have
Oh no,
never
that
been
that
put
seems
into a
about
headlock
right. That seems
by
about right, yeah.
anybody in this sport. But the one guy to do it was Tiger Williams because he was telling a story about some time that he was just trying to, get leverage on a guy, and he wound up putting him in a headlock, and he put me in a headlock as an example. So I have that experience to take with me.
Alex, why wouldn't he put you in a headlock? That makes perfect sense to me.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And if he had a hockey stick, he probably would have rode it
A
like a
hundred
horse
percent.
through the lobby of the hotel.
Oh my
Yes.
God,
And
Tiger Williams.
now I understand what that reference is because I had to go
Oh,
through it. I would not have known that
Yeah.
my first year, but having gone through that experience, now I do.
it's funny what you remember with a headlock. Like the memory, right? You get a
It all
headlock and you
comes
do it. Yeah, you're right. It all
it all
comes
comes
back.
back.
Yeah.
Okay, before we move on from the LA chapter, well, I mean, you literally went coast to coast and then back to coast. But early in your time in LA, there was a really unique story that spun out of this. I'm gonna go a little off script here, but that involved your name, Alex Trebek, and the game of Jeopardy. True or false? And what's the story?
Okay, so it's a Sunday night, and I'm just getting set for, I don't know, just going to bed or whatever. And I get a phone call from a number I don't recognize, and I let it go to voicemail, thinking it's just spam. And up comes a message from Harvey Levin of TMZ, and he, I still have the voicemail on my phone,
Of course
That's
you do.
uh,
awesome.
and it's still surreal to think. But basically, he had been doing an interview for a syndicated show for Fox News, and I guess they were doing an interview with Alex Trebek, asking him, no, as one of the many questions at the time they were asking him, have you ever thought about who would be a good successor for you on Jeopardy? And the answer he gave was, I really haven't thought about it much, but that guy Alex who does the LA Kings, he does a pretty good job, and his name is Alex too. And there's this woman on CNN and whatnot. So again, unbeknownst to me that what's going on until I see the voicemail, and then I get a barrage of text messages the next morning, and it's, I don't know, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock in the morning Pacific time. My face was on the Today Show, on Good Morning America, on like more on ESPN Mike and Mike. And like, why? What was going on? But
Yeah.
did you see this story? You're all over it. No, what's going on? So I could only describe the feeling of sheer terror of waking up as if like you had committed a murder, and like all of a sudden your face is on, morning television, except this was, for a good thing, right?
Right, right.
Um, but it goes to show you never know who's watching. And we obviously, late great Alex Trebek, he's a great Canadian and a big hockey fan and lived in LA
Yeah.
and watched a lot of Kings hockey. And so there you go. You put two and two together. Oh yeah, that guy might be okay at that. Cool.
How good is that, though, huh? You're 1 year into your gig with the LA Kings on TV, and your name's being bantered around for one of the all-time game show host positions in like the history of television. I love it.
It was the most out of body experience of all time, and my welcome to LA moment, truly, because you hear all the time about, oh, you spot a celebrity in some restaurant, and oh, you never know who's watching, you never know who's in the stands. Well, truly, you never know who's watching because here it is, one of the more recognizable faces in all of television.
What's the strangest, funniest, craziest thing that's ever happened to you on the air?
Oh. Um, some of the instances where we had a celebrity with us in the booth in LA were interesting. Some better than others. Obviously we did the Snoop dog thing a bunch there, and we got some viral clips out of that. But there were some other ones that were pretty strange. And again, I walk away from the game thinking, what did we just do? Um, and so I was not a huge fan of that at the time. But I guess that's LA, right? We had to lean in a little bit to that. So there were a couple of strange ones on that. I've been fortunate. I've never had to dress up in a costume or do any gag that's truly ridiculous. But so I've been I think I've been spared in my career from a lot of that.
So you weren't because Will Ferrell is also like
Oh
today
yeah.
he's still one of the well-known faces
Yes, yeah.
of King's celebrity fandom. Did you ever have a chance to meet him at any of the
Oh
King's
yeah.
games?
Well,
Yeah.
he came on with us in
Yeah,
character as
yeah,
Ron Burgundy.
that's okay. I wasn't sure if you were
Oh
there at
yeah.
that time or
Oh
not.
yeah.
Oh my
Oh
God,
yeah.
Alex, that was like one of the best moments in NHL
Oh,
broadcast.
it
Seriously.
blew up. It blew up completely. Although it was funny meeting him beforehand, and I get the sense, and you know this too, that when you put the headset on, it's such a strange, disorienting sensation if you're not used to it. So I met Will before he came on with us, and we're just shooting the shit. We're talking
Yeah.
about hockey, and I see, he gets into, characters. He's walking into the booth and whatever, and he puts the headset on, and I can instantly tell just by looking at his facial expressions, like he's having to try really hard now because he has the crowd pumped in his ears, and he has a producer in his ears, and I'm sure he's done live television before. He's done SNL, right? It's different when you have an IFB going. It's different when you've got, the sticks and pucks and posts and the glass, and you could hear all of it, and you could hear yourself at a really high volume. And I remember coming away from that experience, and him kind of, I could see kind of the sigh of relief when it was done and he took the headset off of just that. I didn't ask him about it because he was whisked away really quickly, but I looked over and thought, man, what we do is actually kind of challenging considering it's an experience that, you know, is not normal for even the highest of high profile actors in Hollywood.
I can go.
Yep.
Bit of a topic change. When you do tennis, what's the difference? Because you kind of it's a totally different vibe than doing a sport that's constant because there's all these breaks and pauses where you want the analyst to get in and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, it's far more a reaction to what you're seeing as opposed to play by play in the traditional sense. I think it's far more captioning a moment or being ready for a big moment. Sometimes being able to hold a conversation through pauses, through when the ball is in play. It's very analyst driven, for sure. And there are games, entire games in a match, especially if the crowd is going, where I don't say a word.
Wow.
Golf and tennis in some ways are similar, but I do feel like in golf, even you have to set up the moment a little bit more. Tennis, you just let it ride. You let the whole thing breathe and lay out. And I've gone back and watched some of the French Open that I did this past season for TNT, and I actually was taken aback by wow, I had to lay out a lot. Like the crowd was going nuts for, let's say it was a French player who was about to have a monumental upset, or even in the final, Coco Gauff. And I remember thinking to myself, okay, how am I going to punctuate this moment when it's over? Because we're getting down to the very end here. And all you're thinking about in those final few games is, okay, how do we get to that moment? And then how do we stick the landing in that moment?
So when you're working tennis with an analyst, is it almost like asking the right question to probe or prod or to get, or does that just come naturally?
I think the best play-by-play voices don't. I think they let the analysts just take control when there's a point that's over, or where it may be a quieter period where the crowd isn't going. There have been a couple of short points, and you can let the analysts talk through it. Occasionally you'll tee them up, but I think the best tennis analysts you'll find can almost hold a conversation with themselves. And from the standpoint of play by play, it's either to wrap it up with a nice bow with a stat that you may have in front of you, or maybe the action forces you to call a point and pivot in that way. But most of the time, it's so analyst driven because you don't want to get in the way when the ball's in play. It's just whenever a serve is hit, you shut up.
Would you consider baseball to be the exact opposite of that, Alex? I mean, Steve and I are both baseball fans, and we watch a lot of baseball. Do you feel like the play-by-play guy always has to have something? There always has to be conversation between you and your analyst?
It's becoming closer to tennis, I think, because in the pre-pitch clock era, and I'm not necessarily an authority on baseball play-by-play, not in the least, but I've just noticed that in the pitch clock era, you have less time to tell stories. As a result of that, the analyst has to be part of the conversation more than your traditional play-by-play guy in baseball, who was tasked in a lot of ways with being almost like an analyst by talking about the strategy of the runner, the lead that they have off first, whether it's a hitter's count or not, and what the approach might be. I think we are leaning on the analysts more to do that. And I think it's a good thing at the end of the day. I've found I've gotten myself um, in trouble sometimes where I veer into the analyst lane. It's something that I had to learn early in my career of because I'm trying to show I know the material, I know the sport,
Yeah.
but don't lead the witness. And especially now in the pitch clock era, I think it's a lot easier to just stick to the nuts and bolts of play by play, get a short, sweet story in, and then if you have an opportunity to get a next layer, okay, we can unearth that later on in an at bat or later on in the game. We don't have the time to go through an entire story start to finish like Vin Scully did in a single at bat. It just, there's no time for it anymore.
So you've watched baseball long enough as a fan. Do you like the pitch clock?
Yes, love it. Without a doubt. It has been one of the best innovations in the game recently. The time of game, I'll walk away from a broadcast thinking, man, that game really dragged, and it winds up being 3 hours. And prior to the pitch clock, it might have been four. You think about that,
Yeah.
right? How
Yeah.
much time have we saved just with getting on with it? And in the games that fly by, it is a little bit too fast sometimes. We've done a couple in the last few years where the Marlins, for whatever reason, their pitching staff, when we would go down there to a Friday night baseball game, they'd be throwing pitches so quickly. We would have games that ended 2 hours and 9 minutes, and we
Wow.
would have virtually no time for sale, virtually have no time for replays. We'd get caught multiple times in elements because the game was moving almost too fast. So there is a sweet spot. I think we're right at it, about 2.5 hours for a game.
I'm not a fan of it, Alex, because
Why?
by the time you get through security and you get to through the concession lines and you get your beer and your hot dog and your popcorn, you sit down in the seat. It's already the third inning, and
That
I'm like,
sounds
I
like a
just
you
paid.
problem, not a baseball
It
problem.
does. It does,
I just
doesn't it?
paid $200 for this ticket, and I missed a third of the game. No, but I do agree. Watching it at home, yeah, it's nice because an afternoon game you can get it wrapped up before you got to stoke up the barbecue. So, okay, we're running out of time here. I'm going to put you on the spot for two things. Number one, we've talked about your versatility as a broadcaster. Um, I'm gonna put you on the spot and say, do you have a favorite? And you have to answer. What is your favorite sport to call?
It's hockey. I don't think I'm
Okay.
shocking anybody by saying that. I've
All right.
basically tried to be in this sport for as long as I can remember. So it's hockey. But baseball was the sport that I grew up, yes, watching a little bit more and wanted to call at some point, but hockey, absolutely. I love being at the rink.
Okay. Before we let you go, other than the LA stories, we want one of your best from the booth, from the NHL booth stories. It could be something funny. It could be something awful. It could be almost didn't make it to air. What one
Oh, there were
can you?
plenty of times where we almost didn't make it to air. There was one game in San Jose where I'm glad that we had studio support for this game because we were in black, I think, until 6 o'clock. It's a 7 o'clock puck drop. I think they got the truck up and running by 6:30. I think we even had time to squeeze in a quick rehearsal and somehow got on the air at 7. I don't think we had graphics. I think we had a score bug. I'm shocked that audio was working properly, but somehow we got on the air. We were knocked off the air briefly last year with TNT, and that was a disorienting experience when the truck lost power and there's nothing you can do. You're just sitting there, and it was unfortunate. But yeah, there have been times, I'm sure you've been involved in any number of them, Chopper, where you are just at the mercy of the TV sports gods with whether or not we make it here today. And it's shocking. It is truly shocking. And I haven't been in this business all that long, how many times we are this close and somehow make it work.
Well, you know what, Alex? Those times did not go so well in the truck, but today did. And I can't thank you enough for carving out again your busy schedule. When I saw you in Utah a couple of weeks ago and you agreed to do this, it was a great day. So Steve and I
Oh,
are
I
both very
appreciate
thankful
that.
for that, and good luck on the call tomorrow night in Seattle for TNT, and good luck with the rest of your Ranger season.
Thank you, my friend. Appreciate the invite.
Thanks, Alex, very much.
Thank you. Appreciate you guys. Thanks so much for having me on.